What's up, Chargers fans, and welcome to another episode of ChargersCast. I'm your host, Kirk Brewer. ChargersCast is a podcast about everything Los Angeles Chargers, by fans, for fans. So I appreciate you hanging out with me and talking about our beloved Los Angeles Chargers. In this episode, we're going to cover the last preseason game against the 49ers. We're not going to spend too much time on that. We'll give kind of a general overview, talk about a few points, but otherwise, at this point, put that in the rearview mirror and move on to what I think all of us are a lot more interested in at this point, which is roster cut down and the 53, the initial, not the final. Ortiz is going to continue to cook, but the initial 53-man roster. So without further ado, let's get into it. And as you guys probably know by now, a tradition here on ChargersCast is we got to crack open a nice frosty beverage so that we can keep our vocal cords lubricated while we're doing the podcast. So this week, we've got one of my favorites, which is a Stiegl Hell. It's out of Salzburg, Austria, which visited this summer and came across this really, really awesome Austrian lager. So let's crack this baby open and get rolling on the podcast. Good stuff. All right. The final preseason game against the 49ers. Part of the reason we're going to have to spend a whole lot of time on this game is we really didn't have any starters, any noteworthy starters play in this game. The coaching staff wanted to make sure as much as possible that we were going to keep these guys healthy for week one in Brazil against the Chiefs. So, no Herbert, no starting offensive linemen, no starting wide receivers. I don't think there was a starting running back in the game. Trying to think, other than our special teams guys, if we really had starters anywhere playing in the game, and nothing's necessarily popping to mind that I recall seeing. So trying to keep the guys healthy for week one. This game, I got to say, was the sloppiest of all of the preseason games, and kind of to be expected because we've got second, third, fourth string guys fighting for roster spots. We really, again, not starting anybody who's definitely first string and maybe high second string. And so way too many penalties, way too many turnovers, super sloppy compared to the previous games. We saw Trey Lance for a couple series, and I think we saw Taylor for a couple series, and then we turned it over to DJ, and I always butcher the poor guy's name. I'll just call him Ukulele. It's pretty close, DJ Ukulele. But it wasn't pretty. Trey looked pretty good. Taylor looked okay. That was probably the biggest thing to look for in the whole game, quite frankly, was that QB2 battle, which I think was pretty much all but sewn up by the time that game even started, unless something unexpected happened. And then at that point, we were just kind of looking to see, again, is there one of those players, an undrafted free agent that might flash? And we had a couple guys, but they were guys that had already flashed in previous games. But again, they're fighting for roster spots. Caleb Murphy is one of those guys in particular. But again, it was mostly bad, not a whole lot of good. And, not a whole lot to spend there. One notable thing that came out of that game would be Josh Harris got injured. I don't know the nature of the injury, but he was put on injured reserve, designated to return, as they were paring down the roster to the 53. So they were left without a long snapper as they were preparing the 53-man roster. It's my understanding Tucker Fisk, the tight end, the blocking tight end, He is our designated emergency long snapper, but as we'll get into it, they were already looking out on the waiver wire for somebody that's got long snapper experience to come in, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we roll into the next portion of the podcast, which is the roster and roster cutdowns in particular. So let's talk about that. That's where I think all of our interest is at this point. For those of you who saw the 49ers game, you saw it, you know what it was. Like I said, probably not totally unexpected that it was going to get sloppy. And for those of you who didn't see it, you didn't miss anything. Okay, so we'll just move on. Roster cutdowns. First thing I wanted to cover, by the way, we're recording this here on Wednesday, August 27th. Roster cutdowns were yesterday by 1 o'clock Pacific time. The roster had to be cut down to 53. And then I believe it was today by 1 o'clock, they had to sign players to their practice squad. Okay. And you get 16 players on your practice squad, unless you got an international player, which the Chargers do, which then allows you to have 17 players on your practice squad. So 53 on the active roster and 17 for the Chargers on their practice squad. All right. Notable cutdowns, notable folks that were cut off the roster. We don't need to go through all the guys that most of us don't know any of their names, but you know, the guys we know their names. First off, Taylor Heinecke. We flat out cut him. I thought there was a chance that he was going to stay on the roster with Trey and, of course, Justin, and that we would possibly carry 3 quarterbacks, even though it's costing us some decent money to have both of those guys, Trey and Taylor, where Taylor would be the emergency quarterback. But Taylor was getting paid noticeably more than Trey Lance. And so with Trey winning the QB2 battle, I think the team was kind of like, look, we'll take our chances. No sense continuing to pay Taylor what we're paying him if he's not going to be the firm QB2. Which kind of makes sense. Save yourself the money. You might need to spend that someplace else, even though we still got quite a bit of cap space. So that was noticeable, very notable that Taylor was just flat out cut. We cut quite a few running backs, and based on what I've seen on social media, quite a few people were surprised by these running backs that were cut. I wasn't really surprised. I was surprised by one of them. The rest of them I really wasn't surprised. So the running backs that were cut, Jarrett Patterson, kind of figured he was going to be cut. Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders, 50-50, he made the roster is what I was thinking maybe. Miller Hines, I figured he was going to get cut. Just too many fumbles, too many miscues, figured he was going to get cut. And then they also cut Kamani Vidal, which I was surprised by that. I thought Kamani was going to make the active roster and they were going to carry 4 running backs. But he didn't. They cut him. Wide receivers that were cut. There were several, but the 2 notable wide receivers, Brendan Rice, who I think all of us had high hopes for as a 7th round pick last year, and then Jalen Reagor, which maybe it's not a surprise, but he's a known name, and I think quite frankly he just ended up being kind of the odd man out. I don't think they had any issues with his play. And I think they're still optimistic about what he can become as a former first-round pick, but he was the odd man out. I think at the end of the day, the guys they kept totally make sense. And so Jalen Reagor was just the odd man out. And there were some other places they needed that roster spot. So he got cut as well. A couple of our 2025 draft picks got cut. And probably not a huge surprise. They were at the tail end of the draft. Branson Taylor, 6th round offensive lineman, and Tre'Quez Bridges, 7th round defensive back. Neither of those guys really flashed and really, made a name for themselves in camp and preseason. I don't think the team's necessarily ready to give up on them, but they weren't going to keep an active roster spot for either of these guys. Odds are pretty high. One or both of those guys were going to end up on the practice squad, as a few of these other guys that we're talking about. And then last but not least, one that I think we all, kind of feel pulling our heartstrings, Tony Jefferson. He was cut. And at first, at least the reactions I'm seeing on social media, people were, kind of down on that a little bit. But thinking back to last season, I was taken back a little bit too. I figured he would make the active roster based on everything he's done in preseason and what he did last season. But thinking back on it, this is exactly what they did last season, is they cut him heading into the 53-man roster so they could use that roster spot to protect somebody else. And then they signed him to the practice squad, and then they activated him when they needed him. And so I suspect that's what the case was. And we know who's on the practice squad, and we'll go over that. And so you'll kind of see how that shook out with some of these players. Let's go over the 53-man roster. Kind of my big take on it was it shook out about where I thought it would for 99% of the positions. Pretty close, maybe 92% of the positions. But there were a couple undrafted free agents who I thought would probably be practice squad guys who actually made the 53-man roster. So there are more undrafted free agents that made the 53-man roster on what otherwise is pretty dang talented roster than I thought. And that may have just been a kind of a shell game that Ortiz was playing to protect those guys and cut some guys who he thought he might be able to bring back in on the practice squad. I don't know that for sure, but that's kind of maybe my speculation. So let's go over the 53-man roster. Who is on the 53-man roster? This isn't final. Ortiz is going to continue to shuffle pieces, but this is what we have starting out with. Okay. No surprises at quarterback. Justin Herbert, Trey Lance. I was a little surprised they didn't have a third quarterback, but with Justin's history, the reality is they probably don't need a third quarterback, right? So why waste that roster spot for that third QB? Justin's kind of an Iron Man. Even though he's gotten banged up, he still plays through injury. And if he absolutely can't play through injury, we've got Trey Lance there. And Trey had a great preseason, and I feel pretty doggone confident that he can hold down the fort for one play or a series or a half, or maybe even a week or two if Justin got hurt that bad. But our goal is to keep Justin upright so that he can do Justin stuff and get us to the promised land where we're trying to go. Running backs. We only kept 3 running backs. I thought we were going to keep 4. We only kept 3 running backs on the roster. The 3 we kept, I'm not surprised with at all. Like I said, I'm just a little surprised that Kamani Vidal wasn't the 4th running back that we kept on the roster. Instead, we cut him. So Omarion Hampton, of course. Najee Harris, of course. But we thought there was a possibility he could start the season on the non-football injury list because of his 4th of July superficial eye accident. But no, they moved him off the NFI and put him on the active roster. So pretty optimistic that he could be playing in week 1, which would be awesome. So I really want to see that 1-2 punch with Najee and Hampton. And then the third one is Hassan Haskins. Wasn't surprised that we were going to keep Haskins. I know a lot of you guys were. I wasn't. Number 1, he's a Harbaugh guy from Michigan. Number 2, I think he showed out pretty good last year. I mean, I remember that 1 touchdown run that was really awesome, and we needed it. It was in a pinch. It was in a close game that we were fighting in. And I think he's got special teams value, and he's a hard runner. And so, we've got the 1-2 punch of Najee and Omarion. Don't be surprised if they bring another running back onto the active roster. But right now, those are our 3 guys. and I think they complement each other pretty doggone well. And then for fullback, Scott Matlock, our three-way player, right? He plays special teams, defensive tackle, and fullback. And then, of course, we have Tucker Fisk at tight end, who also plays some fullback as well. Then we've got our wide receivers. This was a very deep, which is after last season is really awesome to be able to say. We've got a very deep wide receiver room. So we've got Justin surrounded now by some very talented and comparable weapons. Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey. I cannot wait to see these two guys on the field at the same time and to see what defenses do. Now, Ladd, he's got high 4.3 speed, so he can stretch defenses. Keenan, he's not necessarily going to stretch defenses, but his route running, combined with Ladd's route running, I mean, these two guys are expert route runners, and Keenan's just a savvy veteran. So having those two guys, I don't care, outside, both slot on each side, slot next to each other, bunch formations. I could give a crap where they put these guys on the field. Defenses are going to have fits trying to cover these two guys on any given play. Okay. But then QJ, he can stretch the field. I think we're all still, every time the ball's in the air, we're a little worried about his hands. And then Darius Davis, I think that was a given. Darius, he's our return guy. So no shocker there. And word out of camp is he's really had a good camp this year. And we'll probably see him a little bit more than we normally do, actually, as a wide receiver, not just a return guy. But then our two rooks, man, these guys had a great preseason. Both Trey Harris and KLS, super, super excited to see what both of these guys are going to do this season. So deep wide receiver room, talented wide receiver room, probably the most talented wide receiver room I've seen, probably going back to the days with Vincent Jackson and M80 and those guys. Yeah. So this could get really, really fun this season, given Justin these weapons, but combining that with a thumper running game, which Harbaugh and Giro pride themselves on. So a lot to be excited there about. And then tight end. I don't think there's any shockers here. I was a little surprised that Popper left one of these guys off his projected 53-man roster. I didn't have the time to do a projected 53-man roster. I figured let's just let them decide on their 53-man roster. Then we'll come in here and we'll talk about it and analyze it a little bit. But Popper missed this one a little bit, and I was a little surprised because I would have included Tucker Fisk, but he didn't include Tucker Fisk making the 53-man roster, and I couldn't see how he would leave Tucker Fisk off, knowing he's really an important part of our running game, quite frankly. And our passing game is a pass blocker, but more so our running game. And so when you got totally brain farting here, Scott Matlock and Tucker Fisk on the field at the same time, two big bodies blocking for what otherwise are big pounder running backs, you theoretically got 8 linemen. If there's also another tight end, you got 8 linemen blocking for our running backs, which is crazy. So 4 tight ends we kept, not 3, 4. Will Dissly, no surprise there. Will had a great season, probably one of the top blocking tight ends in the NFL, but also a decent receiving threat. Tyler Conklin, which I'm really interested to see how he fits in. We really didn't see a whole lot in the preseason games, so really looking forward to the season kicking off and seeing how Tyler fits in because he's got great hands. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he does not shy away from contact. So really looking forward to seeing how he fits in. I see him as kind of a George Kittle type of tight end where he can catch the ball really well, and then he actually looks for contact versus looking to avoid contact, which is a great thing to have in a tight end. And then we got Tucker Fisk, which, like I said, I'm not surprised Tucker Fisk made the 53-man. I think he's actually a critical piece to our offense. And then last but not least, Rondé Gadsden, our other 6th-round pick. Is he 6th or 5th? I go look it up, but I believe he was 6th-rounder. And he was probably 5th. I know Trey was 5th. I think those two guys were 5th. I go look it up. But really looking forward to, he got a couple passes in the 49er game, touchdown pass actually from DJ, and looking forward to watching his maturation process as a tight end within this offense. I think he brings an element to our offense. He's really a hybrid tight end wide receiver, and really looking forward to see what he can bring, because he's got the route running skills, he's got the size, he's got the speed, and he could really be that wild card for this offense that Giro can game plan around. So let's keep an eye on Gadsden. Really excited to see what he can become this season, as well as KLS. KLS, I think, not to take anything away from Trey, but KLS is a 5th-round draft pick. Don't be shocked if in a couple seasons he turns out to be a very, very special wide receiver. Offensive line, we kept 8 offensive linemen. Most of these are not shockers, except the guy we traded for during this little cut down period here. But otherwise, I don't think Ortiz is done with this offensive line. If he is, I'd be shocked, because with Rashawn going down, we signed Mackay, but then Rashawn goes down. So I would say we're almost in the same boat we were last season at this point, until we sign somebody who is far superior to Trey Pipkins. Okay, is bottom line on that. Or we sign an absolute stud center to replace Bradley Bozeman. But I mean, heck, Bose was just voted a team captain for the 2025 season. So it looks like we're rolling with Bose. And if that's the case, as our starting center, if that's the case, then we really need somebody on that right side tackle position that is better than Pipkins. So we kept 8 offensive linemen, no shockers for most of it. Joe Walt, Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, Mekhi Becton, Trey Pipkins, Jamari Salyer, Andre James, which is a free agent signing that had been the starting center for the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, for the past several seasons. And then we made a trade for a 2027, not 2026, a 2027 conditional 7th-round pick for Austin DeCalis. And I probably butchered his name, but Austin DeCalis, he's kind of a journeyman offensive tackle from the Houston Texans. So it'll be interesting. He's on the 53-man roster. And so it'll be interesting to see. It seemed like the way that signing went down with all the other offensive linemen that got cut during the 53-man, and we go out and actually trade for this guy versus letting Houston cut him, and then we go sign him. It would appear that Ortiz and the offensive coaching staff, specifically the line coaching staff, probably had an eye on this guy, and there's something about him that they like. So keep an eye on him, and also don't be surprised if we go sign a starting caliber right tackle. I wouldn't be surprised. We have places we want to go this season. And again, it's no offense. I like Trey Pipkins a lot as a human being, and I definitely like him as a backup swing tackle. But as a starting tackle, even next to Mekhi Becton, as a starting tackle, if we want to have a real shot at a Super Bowl, I don't think it's with Trey Pipkins. I'll just be honest with you. So don't be shocked if Ortiz cooks for a starting caliber right tackle. Okay? Wouldn't be shocked at all. We've got the cap space to do it. Got the draft capital to do it. It's got to be the right player at the right price, bottom line. But I suspect Ortiz is already out shopping. On defense, defensive line, we kept 6 defensive linemen. Tier Tart, Deshaun Hand, Otito Oboinya, Justin Aboigbe, Jamari Caldwell, our 3rd round draft pick who has flashed this preseason, and then the other free agent that we signed along with Deshaun Hand, Naquan Jones. So really no shockers there. All of these guys have played very, very well in the preseason, and I think it turned out, it was an unknown heading into the preseason, but it's turned out that this rotation is exceptionally stout. And with having 6 of these guys, they can rotate them in and out and keep them fresh. So I think our interior defensive line is actually a strength. Even though we lost Puna Ford, we've made up for Puna with a couple other players. On the edge, 5 edge players, Khalil Mack, Tui Pelotu, Bud Dupree, no shockers there. Okay. The other 2 guys, Kyle Kennard, 2025 draft pick, and he was a 4th rounder. He hasn't flashed a whole lot in training camp and preseason, but near the tail end here, he's shown out a little bit more. So looking forward to seeing him continue to mature. And then Caleb Murphy, who has flashed throughout the preseason. This is one of those guys, undrafted free agent who made the active roster, and he's shown out. So really looking forward to seeing him come on during the season as well. Inside linebacker, 4 of these guys, 3 of them I would say not a surprise. 4th one, definitely a surprise. At least it was a surprise to me that he made the active roster versus going to the practice squad. Okay. So Denzel Perryman, Dayon Henley, and Troy Dye, not surprised at all. Troy, I mean, what can you say about Troy, man? He's steady Eddie. He's a great backup. Special teams value. A valuable player on this roster that provides quality depth, special teams, and inside linebacker. The 4th one, though, it's not Junior Colson. Marlowe Wax out of Syracuse. Free agent linebacker who flashed. He's a free agent, undrafted rookie free agent who flashed during the preseason and really balled out. And he made the active roster, which is totally awesome. I mean, you got to be playing some good ball to make the active roster as an undrafted rookie free agent on the Chargers. Okay, this roster's pretty mature in Ortiz's 2nd year. And so, this guy was playing pretty doggone well for him to make the active roster as the 4th inside linebacker. Junior Colson. I don't know what the deal is with Junior, but they didn't cut him or waive him, but he's not on the active roster. They actually put him on IR, and not the IR designated to return. He's on IR, and he's out the entire 2025 season. So he missed his entire rookie season. Well, not entire. He played a little bit. His rookie season went to IR. Now he's going to miss the entire. He's not going to get any reps in the real season in his sophomore season. And what I just heard today is he needs shoulder surgery. Don't know why, don't know when that came about, but heck, he was on injured reserve a good portion of last season. Not quite sure what the deal is there, but Junior's out. And so those are our 4 inside linebackers: Denzel, Henley, Troy Dye, and Marlowe Wax. All right. Defensive backs. Instead of breaking them out, cornerbacks and safeties, because the way Jesse Minter likes to play defense, a lot of times these guys are interchangeable. He has said on numerous occasions he wants to put the next best player when a guy goes down. So if you have a safety go down and he thinks the next best player is a cornerback and not a safety, then he'll bring in the cornerback and he'll shuffle the responsibilities on the defense. It's a really, it's an awesome concept based on how they perform on the field, and they've done a pretty damn good job last season being the number one scoring defense in the league. And as it's looked through preseason, there's no reason we shouldn't expect this defense to be at least top 5 in scoring defense in 2025. So we've got 12 defensive backs on the team as of now. No shocker, Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, Elijah Molden, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, those 2 guys being 5th-round picks from last season who have shown out. And then free agent signings, Dante Jackson and Benjamin St. Juste. Our good old journeyman guy, Jasir Taylor. And then rookie draft pick, R.J. Mickens, who's played some pretty good ball in preseason. It was nice to see. And then 3 free agent, drafted rookie free agent defensive backs. You guys probably at least know 2 of them because they showed out in different games. Eric Rogers and Nico Reed. Okay? And then the 3rd guy, or the 12th guy, however you want to separate it out there, Kendall Williamson. I believe he was wearing number 40 in the preseason. And I don't recall him flashing per se, but he was steady Eddie and he was holding down his spot. So they saw enough in him to keep him on the active roster versus cutting him and trying to bring him back onto the practice squad. So there you have it. That's the current 53-man. That's going to be in flux immediately. I think I've heard some rumors that Nico Reed is going to go to IR, designated to return, and they're going to, do something with his position. And I think that position might have been the long snapper position. I believe we're bringing in a free agent long snapper that used to be with Philadelphia. What was that guy's name? I've got it here somewhere, folks. Or maybe I don't. Sorry, I do not. I did notice that I left off our special teams guys, which at this point, it's only 2 guys. Cameron Dicker, the kicker, and our punter. So those are the 2 that would round out our 53. J.K. Scott, our punter. So, and we are signing a long snapper, and I apologize. I do not have him on my note sheet. So watch the news. I think we've already signed him and moved Nico to IR, designated to return. And the free agent long snapper that we're signing, it's my understanding he's just going to fill that role until Josh Harris comes back off of IR, which is a minimum of 4 games when you go on IR, designated to return. I have not heard what the nature of Josh's injury is, but I do understand he sustained that injury in the 49ers game, which is a total bummer. And I'm sure the coaches were not happy about that in the last preseason game and having to jockey the roster around a little bit because he got injured. So it is what it is. Notable free agents that got cut on some other teams that we might recognize and wouldn't necessarily be shocked if, as the roster continues to get shuffled, if these guys end up coming home. Two in particular that I noticed that I'm personally a big fan of and would not be shocked at all because I think they bring tremendous value for what they cost the team. Number one, our special teams ace and backup linebacker, Nick Neiman. He got signed away this past free agent period. I'm sure the Chargers would have liked to have had him back. and they were going to do what they typically do, which is get through the draft and get near training camp and preseason, and then sign those last couple guys. Well, Nick got signed away. I believe it was the Carolina Panthers who signed him. Well, the Carolina Panthers cut him yesterday. So at this point in time, Nick Niemann appears to be a free agent, and he is a special teams ace. So I suspect Ryan Ficken is absolutely in Ortiz's ear about, hey, figure out a way to get this guy back on our roster, because he is huge on special teams, but he's also good for some quality reps as a backup inside linebacker should somebody go down. And remember, we're only carrying 4 guys, right? And Colson's out for the whole season. So don't be shocked if you hear Nick Niemann coming back on the Chargers. The other guy, which I'm a huge fan of as well, absolutely love him, journeyman defensive lineman. I was a little bummed that he didn't get re-signed by us, and instead he was allowed to walk, and the Atlanta Falcons signed him. But the Atlanta Falcons just cut him yesterday, and that's Morgan Fox. I love Foxy. And by the way, Foxy, he's blue-collar, lunch-pail guy that produces. He's one of those few defensive linemen that finds a way to get interior pressure up the middle, which is crazy valuable. And so he doesn't cost a lot. He knows the scheme. Do not be surprised if one way or another they find a way to get him back on the roster. Now, if you remember, we are currently carrying 6 defensive linemen in that rotation. So I suspect they don't want 7, but don't be surprised if maybe Naquan Jones gets waived and Morgan gets signed. I wouldn't be shocked. And maybe they put Jones on the practice squad. I don't know. But I think Morgan brings a ton of value, and he's a team player. He's just one of those guys, brings his hard hat and his lunch pail. So 2 guys I wanted to point out that as far as we sit right now recording this thing, that we know as Chargers fans that are productive, valuable players that don't break the bank, that got cut by other teams. So there you have it. That is pretty much it for this episode of Chargers Cast. I think I've covered everything I wanted to share with you guys. Real quick. Notable practice squad signings. Don't want to leave without covering that. None of these are going to be shockers to you. At least they weren't to me. These were ones I was hoping would take place or made sense to take place. We filled out the practice squad, got the full 17 on there. Don't want to go over all 17, but here are a few notables. At the running back position, shocker, Kamani Vidal is signed back to the practice squad. Don't be shocked if they find a way to get him back on the 53-man too, okay? I think Kamani has earned that. And then I'm going to butcher his first name, Naheem Miller Hines. A lot of people were really rooting for him, and I wasn't shocked that we cut him, and I'm not shocked that we signed him to the practice squad. I think there's value there. I think he's very capable, but I think he still needs some time to kind of get back to his old self as a football player, and it kind of showed in the preseason. Now, Rocket Sanders, a lot of folks are going to be disappointed in the fact that he did not get signed to the practice squad, but I think there's a reason. I think we would have signed him back to the practice squad, but he actually got picked up by another team when he was waived before we could sign him to the practice squad. So another team signed him, and good for them. He's a rookie, undrafted free agent. He's got a lot to prove. It's not like he's the next coming of Barry Sanders or anything like that, regardless of what you'll hear from some fans out there. Not that he was bad, okay, but his body of work is really small. And I think Kamani, personally, outplayed him. Some people are saying Kamani's too small. They don't understand football. Kamani's short. He's not small. He's short, but he's big. And you don't see him coming through the hole until he's right on you if you're a linebacker trying to fill the hole. So, and he's got speed, he's got burst, and he's got power. So there's a reason Kamani has been on the team, and there's a reason they re-signed him to the practice squad. We also re-signed Jalen Reagor to the practice squad. No shocker there. I think the Chargers want to keep him as close as they can to the fold. As we talked about, our wide receiver room it's deep. It's deep with some quality. And we need to keep that one space for our punt returner, kick returner with double D. And so Reagor was just the odd man out. And I totally get it. But we were able to get him re-signed onto the practice squad. One that everybody, I think, is going to be cheering for. And again, it makes sense when you stop and think about it. This is what they did last season. But Tony Jefferson. Tony brings more than on-field play as far as value goes to the Chargers. I mean, he's got so many years of experience. By the way, he's a San Diego guy. So there's that connection as well. But, he brings so much experience that even when, you've lost a step when you get a little bit older, the fact that you've seen so many things, you can make that up with the mental diagnosis. And that's what Tony has clearly shown. And in this case, I think, again, it was one of those, they had to kind of figure out, who do we think, if we waive, will or won't get signed by another team? And so I'm pretty certain there was another player that they're like, we need to protect this guy on the 53, waived Tony, and then brought him back on the practice squad, which is exactly what they did last season. And they didn't activate him until they needed him. I think Elijah Molden had gotten hurt for a little bit. And so they brought Tony up, and he played quality reps. And so no shocker there. We also signed to the practice squad quarterback DJ. Again, I'm just going to call him Ugalele. I'm not surprised by this at all. I think this kid's got incredible talent. He's definitely got the size. He looks the part. And I think he's still pretty doggone raw despite his college experience. He's kind of up and down. And so I'm not surprised at all that they kept him around versus Taylor. And I think that just comes down to respect for Taylor, to be honest with you, in the sense that Taylor's, at this point in his career, he's a seasoned veteran, and they want to give him a chance to maybe catch on with another team that may need a QB2. Probably just out of respect for Taylor to give him that opportunity. Or they didn't want to spend that amount of money on a practice squad player, maybe. So instead, we got DJ Ugalele, and not a shocker, like the move. And then last notable one was Branson Taylor, which was a sixth-round pick in this draft, the offensive lineman that we cut. We signed him back to the practice squad. Not a shocker. There's something they saw in him to draft him in the sixth round, and they want to continue to mold him and keep him in the fold. And the practice squad's the perfect place to do that for a sixth round lineman. That's how those sixth round linemen ultimately end up, some of them really hone their skill set and end up becoming starters for a decade. And you're like, where did they find that guy in the sixth round? Well, it took a couple years, working him through the practice squad. And so Branson was re-signed to the practice squad. Not a shocker, totally expected it. Glad they did it. And hopefully we see him continue to grow, see a skill set where ultimately maybe he does mature into a stud starting lineman. That would be awesome, right? Great problem to have with that. So now that's it for this episode of Chargers Cast. I think we've covered a lot of information here. Hopefully you guys found it interesting, a little entertaining. It's my take on where we're at right now. Again, don't be shocked. Ortiz is going to continue to cook here for these 2 weeks, roughly, until the start of the season. And, it's not 2 weeks now, about a week and a half. But don't be surprised. The roster is going to continue to evolve and be tweaked as players become available and they get some things done and fill some voids. Offensive line to me is still probably that biggest spot, honestly, is finding a true starting right tackle. So Trey can go back to playing swing, and we can now have those positions kind of locked up where Zion and Bozeman are weakest of the two, or, of the five positions. So continue to keep your eye on that. What we'll be looking for in the next episode is any additional roster moves. Probably be back next week before week one game against the Chiefs. And so we'll cover any additional roster moves that Ortiz may make between now and then. And then what I've been planning on doing, and I look forward to doing next week, is going to be doing a 2025 season, doing my predictions for the 2025 season Chargers win-loss record. So I'll go through the schedule and give you my 2 cents on each game and whether I think, it's a win or a loss, and predict what I foresee the Chargers 2025 season shaping up like before we actually kick off week one. And then if we've got anything to cover heading into week one relative to that game, we'll also cover that. So there you have it, folks. Again, appreciate you hanging out with me, talking Chargers. That's it for this episode of ChargersCast. A few last little housekeeping items. I've said this last couple weeks, you guys have noticed I've been flying solo here on ChargersCast, which is great. I don't mind it. Maybe keeps it a little more concise. However, it's by fans for fans. And so would love to, throughout the season, have some additional fans come in, hang out with me, and talk a little ball about our Chargers. So if you would be interested in doing that, if you're not afraid to come on camera and share your opinions about the Chargers, leave a comment below saying, hey, Kirk, hit me up. I would be interested, and we'll hop on a call. We'll chat a little bit and see if that's something we can put together. Okay. And then the only other thing is down below, you'll see a link for ChargersCast.com. That's where you can find links to our merch. And we've got some really cool ChargersCast merch, like this super cool, almost looks like it's U.S. Navy with the navy blue and the gold embroidered stitching. Make the Chargers great again. We've got some really cool ChargersCast merch out there, so feel free to go hit that link down below and check out our merch shop. And with that, you know what time it is. Who's got it better than us, Chargers fans? Nobody. That's it. Bolt up, and we'll see you guys next week. Hi, I'm Kirk Brewer, the creator and host of ChargersCast. I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of ChargersCast. We really appreciate you engaging with the podcast. When I created ChargersCast, it was intended to be a podcast about everything Los Angeles Chargers from a fan perspective. It's by fans and for fans. So it's for you, and we really appreciate you being here. If you haven't done so already, please go down below, leave a comment, give us some feedback. We really love to hear from you. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and click the little bell so that you get notifications when new content drops. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to ChargersCast. And who's got it better than us? Nobody.